how I said how Brian Kilmeade occasionally, like, he has these sort of like woke takes where he points something out that's like really obviously racist, but then he's also like this, he hasn't quite gotten the memo that like they aren't in the Bush era anymore, and they're supposed to be more like sort of like tips of the hat to the kind of like isolationist thing. So he's still really on this, like, it's terrorism. Like, we got to be killing and bombing everybody. You know, like, I guess he does fancy himself some type of expert on Islam or something. And
he
clearly,
wrote a book on Thomas Jefferson and the Barbary Pirates, so I think he's a pretty big expert.
I'm sure he wrote that book. And, you know, and clearly this stuff gives him anxiety. And this pullout of Syria, as I say, there is the real complexity of the Rojava Kurds and some of the humanitarian consequences that will happen. But there's also the reality that we've been there for no strategic purpose, killing thousands of people as active co-participants in the destruction of a country in a multiplayer proxy war that has just devastated Syria. And we, with the Gulf, Russia, and Iran, and everyone are responsible for this, as well as these Salafist groups, and certainly as well as Assad. I'm guessing that Brian Kilmeade is not going to bring any of this up in this clip.
This is according to our friends, the Kurds. Everyone is upset, sad, and afraid. Most who spoke to Fox News afraid to using their names. The Kurds did the fighting, we did the backing, we did the strategizing. Now when we try to go back in there and reestablish ourselves, the big difference is the Russians. Because President Obama sat on his hands, the Russians came in and filled the void. We established that area, started protecting the Kurds, pushing back on ISIS, and now we pull back, they come back. They're not gone,
but you're
they're
assuming
dispersed.
that we're handing Syria to Iran without noting as well that this president stood up to Iran and pulled out of the nuclear deal. Pulled out of the nuclear deal.
What message?
President Obama was handing them cash. Is that a better idea? Let's hand Iran cash.
We're doing the same thing. We are allowing them to reestablish themselves in a region. The counterbalance that this president has provided is dissipated. And the al-Qaeda threat is reforming. Anyone who tells you different will be sitting on this couch in a year talking about the reformation of ISIS and the brutal decimation of that region and our allies in the area.
When he articulated those points, though, about not staying there forever and about bringing those troops home, those were points that were very popular with the American people.
Who cares about popular?
Well,
it's about
because people feel like these things have no end, and that's the idea. And if you're going to have troops stationed there, they want to know a long-term goal. They want to know what the objective is. They want to plan because it's our men and women out there.
They got the objective: destroy the caliphate and make sure Iran has blood,
which could potentially go on forever.
That's a lot of people fired up about this. What do you think, friends? Totally at FoxNews.com. We'll be talking about it all morning.
Man, Kilmeade gets so angry.
I love it.
Here's the thing. Okay. First part, I'm not going to lie. With regards to those quotes from the Kurds, that is true. It's 100% right. I am incredibly worried about the Rojava Kurds. Incredibly worried. Now, obviously, the United States was never supporting them because they care about Kurdish rights or the experiment going on there. Obviously not. The record of the United States would demonstrate that forever. But, I mean, okay, and then we run down the list and, you know, Al-Qaeda is going to reformulate itself and all this stuff and all this nonsense that, you know, there was no need, there's no national security threat in any real way that's posed by these activities to begin with. And dealing with terrorist groups requires small targeted intelligence operations and nothing like these catastrophic wars that have caused such unending damage and death and just, I mean, literally cumulatively, the killing of millions of innocent people by U.S. foreign policy. But the meta critique on this, though, it's like, I think part of the reason that even though Kilmeade is like, you know, a delusional militaristic dunce, at least in his emotionality, he's sort of like registering that this is like an actual thing. Now, he's almost entirely wrong, but these other people would be saying precisely the opposite while Obama was president and promoting the opposite when, and I think in Ed Henry's case it did, when Bush was president. So there is just something so disgusting and a reminder that like these are all just like blow-dried idiots in Midtown who don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They don't care how many people the United States has killed in these places. They don't care about the complex interplay between the Kurds and all these other groups. And incidentally, the people that are going to destroy the Kurds are not Iran, you moron, Kilmeade. It's our good ally Turkey that we just sold over $3 billion worth of new weaponry to. They're going to go after the Kurds. And, so anyways, it's embarrassing. It's pathetic. But Kilmeade continue. If this goes in enough, if this keeps going, I could see Kilmeade being like a sort of like second-term Obama voter. Like, hey, that's a really problematic comment, and we need to have drones in Somalia because of the Al Qaeda.
Hawks for Obama.
Hawks for Obama. That was a real thing, man. Yeah. Okay. This is now Kilmeade. Yeah. Okay. This is actually kind of extraordinary because one of the things. Okay. A little bit of context. First of all, Obama was not gung-ho to get into Syria at all. He allowed himself to get pulled into Syria more and more, and it was accelerated actually through ISIS, not through Assad. So what you basically had in the beginning was the administration just sort of letting the CIA subcontract with Gulf countries. They flooded the place with weapons, and a lot of those weapons and groups go to who the Gulf countries usually support, which are far-right Sunni Salafist groups who gradually undermined and took over what was absolutely an organic, legitimate, and real uprising against the brutality of the Assad regime. And then Obama said if he uses chemical weapons, there'll be a red line, and then we got to get in. And then what ended up happening was that there was a deal that was cut with the Russians, and they didn't do it. Also because there was massive protests because of war fatigue in the United States and the UK. Correct war fatigue. And everybody seems to have gotten the wrong lesson from this. People who still want to deny that the Assad government has those weapons and might have used them will bend in pretzels to deny that that's ever happened, even though I'm sure it's certainly happened, at least in some instances. It's totally belied by the fact that the Russians, who are Assad's prime patron, cut a deal to destroy stockpiles. What does that tell you about their stockpiles? Use a little bit of deductive reasoning here. And then conversely, all of the right-wing hawks and idiots were freaked out because Obama promised the red line, and he promised the red line. Now he needs to bomb Syria because of our credibility and all these other masturbatory concepts.
Who lost China?
Yeah, all of this nonsense that if you have no real-world experience, you don't understand how the world actually works, and you think you're in a Tom Clancy novel from your couch somewhere, or God forbid at a think tank, you get lost in. But actually, he did deal with the red line being crossed, which is they cut a diplomatic agreement which actually worked and held for a little while and was a correct use of diplomacy. But here is the red line's going to be brought up, and Kilmeade, again, is going to be, well, this is just funny. Everybody's wrong here, but it's funny.
Back on ISIS.
But why are you surprised? The president said this in the campaign.
Stunning.
He did,
because
he said we're bringing the boys home.
Oh, he wants to bring back. He
could be wrong, but he promised the American people he's going to do it.
He is doing exactly, if not worse, than President Obama did. This is
but you
worse
have to
than
remember
blurring
too, Brian,
the red line.
the other wing of the Republican Party, the Mike Lees, the Rand Pauls, the Libertarian wing of the have come out and said, listen, you can't. The point that Ed is articulating that you can't stay there forever are accurate to some, and also the notion that yes, during the campaign, I have to tell you, I have a libertarian streak in my blood a little bit, and when he talked about not wanting to be the policeman of the world, that did appeal to a lot of people. You have to remember too, Trump is looking forward to re-election, and he's saying, you know what? I don't only need the base, but I need some of these people in the middle.
Well, let me ask you, Jedediah, what good is re-election if you go ahead and give Syria to Iran, lose Iraq again?
Wow, Rand Paul.
Wow. Another thing, another sentiment I've shared with Kilmeade for completely different reasons. I've had that moment, though, where someone's like, well, I don't know, Rand Paul wants to legalize pot. And I was like, whoa, Rand Paul? Fuck you.
The belligerence of him.
Oh, it's great. He's like, but it's so sincere.
When you
exactly. Like the way his face is red, he's rolling his eyes. It's great.
When you're the only one being genuine and not trying to spin, you can be belligerent.
Right.
And it can still be winning for people.
Look, he's almost entirely wrong, and he's insanely militaristic and delusional. But like, again, the other two are just voids. If they had another script, they would say exactly what he was saying. Like, if Jeb Bush was president And that was like, they would be delivering Kilmeade's script, except it wouldn't even be being delivered because there wouldn't even be this draw out, right? But Kilmeade, yeah, I mean, that's hysterical. It's amazing what he's willing to jeopardize his like TV friendship with Trump over, though. That I will say. Yeah. That also says a lot about him. Like, oh, he'd be low and nuanced about Charlottesville, but not bombing Syria forever. Marxist Republic.